Hi, everyone. We are here with Anja Zhou, who is one of our Technovation judges. And she has let us know that she herself is an entrepreneur and has developed or is in the process of developing her own app around mental health. I'm going to let Anja introduce herself and tell us just a little bit about her app and what it does.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Anja Zhou. I consider myself a founder or entrepreneur, and I've been in the mental health wellness space for about 1.5 years. My company is called Well Well Well. Many would say that it's a catchy title, and I myself, I want it to be, a little bit funnier, a little bit, has a little bit ring to it. And what Well does is we use AI to provide translation and cultural insights to therapists, mental health, and behavioral health.
I'm curious as to what prompted you to create this app. Like what was your interest in this?
Yeah, for sure. That's such a great question. I find that people are always deeply interested in the backstory of founders when they found a company, and that just brings a little bit more life to, what we're really doing to help people understand the passion. So for me, I grew up in China. I'm Chinese, and when I came to the US, I was 17. So there was definitely a lot of pressure on me, both academic and social pressure. And I think that our generation, I know we're a little bit older than the girls in the competition, but our generation was already welcoming the idea of mental health. So that was the just my immediate resource that I sought in my college years. And as much as mental health has been a rock for me, my personal experience was that, without the context of cultural understanding or therapist availability to speak my first language, which was Chinese Mandarin, there was still a huge gap in just for them to understand where I'm coming from, why I'm experiencing the stress, and just for me to deepen my understanding of my own self. So I've always felt that way, and I'm very fortunate to be able to work on this, which is something I'm truly passionate about. As I continue to work on it, and get to know a lot of other people struggling with the same problem, I understand that a lot of us just need the therapist to have a little bit more cultural context, and that can really facilitate a great bond between us and our therapists. Of course, we can't do like 100+ languages at once, but the capabilities of AI, actually, we can do multiple languages at once. So we're trying to focus on the, Spanish, the most spoken, like Spanish, Hindu, Chinese Mandarin, Chinese Cantonese. And then there are a couple of other languages on our radar that we haven't finalized yet. There's also been talk, and actually this is exclusive. So
Ooh.
there's actually been talk of focusing on smaller little spoken languages because those are actually more urgent needs in the medical and healthcare field. You don't see a lot of language interpretation services of, little spoken languages or even dialects of, larger languages. So there's been talk of focusing on that as a strategy, which, is very interesting to me. But of course, I have to do a little bit more research.
Right. So I actually think it is a big issue for these like lesser languages. And part of it I do think is because of all the AI models are trained on, in fact, mostly English, right? But other of the major languages that I wonder if there'll be enough content in those lesser or lesser known languages. It'll be interesting to see as you start to work on that, if there'll be enough content there to make a good model, whatever, to be able to help out in this area.
Yeah, for sure. I really like that you bring in the practical perspective of that, right? Because a lot of entrepreneurship that I see, especially in people my age or younger, is that we see an idea, we think of an idea, we get very excited, but then we sort of ignore the practicality of it. Is that okay, maybe there's not enough content out there based on AI, or maybe there's just not enough businesses that are interested in the idea. So one important thing in entrepreneurship that I think that you brought up, which is very, very good to consider in the beginning, is an idea is good and exciting, but also it's crucial to consider the realistic business aspects of it.
I'm curious to know about how you're interacting with your end users, which I would imagine would be mental health professionals as well as people who are seeking mental health counseling or whatever. So how are you interacting with these people? And what kind of testing and feedback are you doing with your app with them?
Oh, this is very exciting for me to talk about for sure. So I guess I will give you a little bit more context. We're still very early stage, so in the testing prototype phase. And one thing I think a lot of founders miss that is very important is that it's very important to find people who I use the analogy of like headache versus, like non-headaches.
Oh, yeah.
It's important for founders to find the people who have urgent headaches who just in dire need of solutions versus people who think, oh, this is cool, but I'm okay with the current status quo, right?
Hmm.
So my work as of now is to try to find the people with urgent headaches, so to speak. So that's how I'm interacting with people. What I do is I reach out to a lot of people, whether it's through LinkedIn or I go to a lot of networking events. I utilize my school alumni resources. And I talk to them and I open the conversation with a question. Have you experienced this before? Have you experienced in your career language or culture as a barrier to providing care? And if they say no, like because I've been working on this and that, I don't really see that as a primary pain point, then that automatically, it's unfortunate, but it does automatically filter out the people who aren't gonna have an engaging conversation with me, and it save time on both of our ends. After I get through that initial phase, if someone's like, oh yes, like definitely, I'm trying to urgently find a solution on this, then I just listen to their experience. I do a lot more listening than talking because at this stage I'm really trying to learn from them instead of pitch anything. And I find that usually people are very appreciative when they have a space to just talk, right? We all like to be heard. So after that, I say, okay, that sounds like, a real problem for you. I do have a prototype for you if you would like to take a look. And then they do take a look. The last tip I would sort of give in this question is that I try to make them understand that any feedback is good feedback, so they can be as honest as they can. People tend to be very nice, and that's good, especially therapists, right? Like they tend to be very nice and they tend to just only give positive feedback, but that's not going to be super constructive if you're a founder and you're trying to build on feedback. So I try to make sure that everyone can feel as comfortable as they need to be to give me negative feedback if there's anything they
Hmm.
don't like. And I try to reassure them that that's okay, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So that is how I engage with my users.
Probably had an initial idea. Has that evolved based upon some of the feedback that you're getting from some of these people?
Oh, that's a really good question because my initial idea looks nothing like what I have today. So, like I mentioned before, I initially wanted to start a company in mental health because I myself was struggling to have a contextualized in culture, a deeper bond with my therapist. And
Hmm.
the really tipping point for me to start this was when I was at NYU and where I studied psychology at a master's level. And I was talking to my friend she's now working at NYU Langone Health as a clinical researcher for trauma-related work. So she's experienced in the mental health world. And I was just talking to her about, issues that I had with my life, sort of stress, as a new grad. There was something that was very just, it felt deeply connected to my stress, to my source of stress, which was just our parents' expectations for us, which I'm sure a lot of you can relate to. But that coming from her mouth, she was also Chinese, and like her sharing her own experience just felt like a moment where I could feel peace. I felt healed. And that was an incredible experience for me, which unfortunately I haven't had anything similar in a therapy setting. So I thought to myself, wow, like just talking to someone from your own background, from someone you think can relate to you, helps so much. So my initial idea was to create a service that does just that. It was a team of Asian and Chinese professionals in mental health. And we wanted really to target people who look like me, people who speak Chinese or Mandarin or Cantonese. And then that sort of evolved on its own because as we continued to do that program, we realized that in Asian culture, there aren't as big of a population that is open and accepting to mental health care. So we really adjusted it to be more of a coaching program, and we try to target specific issues such as imposter syndrome. expressing your negative emotions such as anger and stress, parental relationships and romantic relationships. So really try to target more practical life uses of these mental health programs. And then after that, I was talking to a lot of people who was already on therapy, and I realized that there is a bigger need for people who already have a therapist who need to connect with them culturally than, people who just need some kind of short-term coaching. So that's when we made the really big pivot from a coaching program to something that utilizes AI.
And it gets back to your people with a headache and people without a headache kind of thing,
Mhm.
right? The
Yeah,
people who really
exactly.
need it, or the people kind of in therapy that have this need right now. I need some help to connect with my therapist, right?
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. I will summarize all of that by saying that, none of this could have been possible for me to like know what's out there, what's more of a headache. None of it would have been possible without talking to real people. So I cannot stress how important it is to just talk to users, have conversations with them, and just listen. What's your biggest pain point? What are you struggling right now? What would be helpful?
And you're talking to both kind of clients and therapists, right? So both sides of the coin there. When your background's in psychology, so you study psychology in college. Is that also kind of why you're leaning towards working in the mental health area?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Correction, I studied psychology in graduate school, not in college. In college, I
Curious,
was
what did you do in college? I'm just curious.
in college, I
What's
was actually an art student. So
Oh, I was too. I studied art in college. So.
that's amazing. Yeah, I love painting. I still do paintings. This is a
Hmm.
virtual background. This is not my room, but in my room, I have a lot of paintings on my wall. It's just, it's something of a hobby, something bigger than the hobby. But in college, I was still taking a ton of psychology classes. I also find that to be incredibly interesting. So it was sort of a natural continuation for me to study that at a graduate school level. I believe that it wasn't an immediate career choice for me to just be straight out of grad school and start my own company. But the context of psychology, my passion, and more importantly, the network of students who are also in psychology helped me greatly with this venture.
And so this leads into the next question. You don't have a technology background.
Correct.
So how did you build this app without any technology background?
Oh, it's amazing right now what AI can do for us. The short answer is I use this no-code AI platform, and there are a ton out there, probably three to four that a lot of us know and would recommend. Unfortunately, off the top of my head, I can't remember which is the most recommended. And I can't say I'm very happy with the one I currently use, so no recommendation here. Like before I even knew that these platforms could do what I wanted to do, I have a childhood best friend who's a product manager, and he's also in college, I believe he studies something like information systems. So he has a little bit of that coding knowledge. And I was kind of just shooting out ideas with him, brainstorming with him. So he actually put me on the no-code platforms. I think that a good rule of thumb is that if you don't know anything about area and you feel like you're in no way qualified to do anything like that, it's always good to reach out to someone and ask like, what do you think of this? Even if you think they're not going to be able to help you because they're so busy or like you don't know each other that well, they might know something like a no-code platform. They might point you in a right direction. And the other thing is I'm just realizing how important it is to talk to people. Like connections are so valuable, both from a mental health standpoint, like we as people, we need to talk to each other. We need to,
Mhm.
stay connected. And also, you never know. If you ask someone for help and they ask you back for help, like you never know what kind of bond that's going to flourish. So that's
Mhm.
something really beautiful.
Are you using something simple like ChatGPT, or are they specific web app building platforms?
Yeah, it's a more specific web app building platform. I would say it sort of functions like ChatGPT in a way that you can use natural language to tell it, like, for example, I want to build this, and when I send you this, I want you to give me an output that does this. You can use natural language to tell it what to do, what we call a
Hmm.
prompt. But it is very different from ChatGPT in a way that I don't know, it just feels more like a back end tool. It's not a chatbot in any way. The way
It's
you
actually generating code for you, right? As you go.
don't copy and paste the codes.
Okay, so it's just automatic. Yeah, because I
Yeah,
know some will you have to copy paste versus it will
some
just
do
generate
that.
it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, yeah.
correct.
You mentioned that you've been doing this for a year and a half. So I'm curious as to what have kind of been the phases of this. Like I'm sure there's marketing, there's networking with people, there's actually developing the content, there's testing. So kind of are you just continuing to do this and is it cyclical or kind of how has that played out over the last 18 months or so?
Wow, that's such a good question. I would say it surprised me because it's more cyclical than I expected. Also, I should mention I'm a solo founder, it's just myself, so my experience might be very different from a lot of other founders who work in teams. So for founders who work in teams who have co-founders, they might have, designated responsibilities, but I'm someone who does it all. So as I mentioned before, I've gone through many reiterations. So every time there's a new reiteration, we have to do everything all over again. So like talking to customers, like exploration, and initial discovery interviews, social media, getting the word out there. And then with product, there's always that's, the interview side of it, collecting information, what people need, and then sort of a mock-up before we commit to the actual engineering product. So it is cyclical in that way. Every time there's like you don't have even have to do a large pivot, but anytime there's like a slight change of your product, which is always going to be the case, you're gonna have to talk to people again about this new idea and new iteration. But it's not like I know with classes and like most things in life, there are modules and it's like step one to step five, right? It's like as you do step two, you expect to do step three next, and step four and step five. But with my experience with entrepreneurship, it's nothing like that
It's
because
like very non-linear.
it's very linear. I expect there to be step one, two, three, four, five, and everybody else expect you to have all five steps planned to like know what's going to happen. But the reality is, as you're at step two, you see another problem that's gonna make step three impossible. So you have to think of a new step three. And everybody else, and what I mean by everybody else is just like your mentors, your investors, like whoever that's
Mhm.
experienced in the space. Everybody else also expects that like they know that reality is going to be very different from your plan, but they expect you to have a plan because it shows organization skills and it shows determination and commitment if you come up with a plan first instead of just like going with the flow.
So have you had to kind of write up some sort of a document or business plan to go out with people?
To talk to people, most people use pitch decks these at this point. I did have
Hmm.
to write a business plan, which was more of a document. So that was interesting. It was interesting because I somebody requested it, and I had no
Okay.
idea what that was. Like I have a background in psychology and art, not business. So I just
Hmm.
looked up what a business plan was. And the smarter thing to do at that point would probably be to ask ChatGPT to generate one for me. It's incredibly good at what it does, to be honest. But no, I had to write that for one out of 100 acceleration programs I applied to. They did ask for a document, a Word document of business plan. But most investors and like I would say 98% of people I talk to use pitch decks and it's just a PowerPoint presentation as like it's pretty standardized in terms of what's in the deck. So you have your problem, you have your value prop, you have like all the other things, competitor analysis, market size. So I guess it's just more of a bullet point format.
I'm looking at our kind of our curriculum. And so we actually at this point have the teams when they submit a business plan. We're moving to a kind of a lean canvas, like a one pager to kind of consolidate it. But interesting that people are actually looking for pitch decks.
In fundraising world, yes, most people look for pitch decks. I've been in accelerators and startup competitions. They also look for pitch decks. But I think in that area, it's more so that pitch decks are for presentation. Like public speaking, we have a presentation. So
Mm.
that is appropriate for if they have something called a demo day where you present to a large audience. Interestingly, there are some investors on LinkedIn posting about how a one-page document is actually a good idea compared to a pitch deck. So that's a new trend in the industry. So you guys might be ahead of the ahead of the trend.
You're like living what we're hoping the girls aspire to. So it's good to get kind of your perspective. And so is a lot of what you're doing also is to enable you to continue doing this and to moving forward is going to these accelerator competitions and that kind of thing to help get investors and funding.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I have a lot of experience in accelerator and pitch competitions and less experience in fundraising. And I will say that the benefit of accelerators and pitch competitions are more on the connection and network side and less of a funding.
So you making meeting a lot of people
Yeah.
that will enable you to network. That's
Yeah,
great.
a lot of founders, a lot of also people who are just leaders in the industry that will introduce me to important people that I want to talk to. So I'll give you a real example. So I last year I was a winner in a pitch competition. It's called an innovation, and it's kind of both. It's both an accelerator and a pitch competition. They give you mentors that you work with for several months leading up to the pitch competition day, and then you compete. So in the several months of mentorship, I was introduced to just like founders doing similar stuff in my space. I was given a lot of advice, very good advice, and I was given access to resources like just for example, like people who are very good at Figma. Me not knowing anything about Figma definitely benefited from that help. So I would say like the benefit of a pitch competition is very much in those resources and the introductions and the network. Because the important question of raising funds is, do you actually need to raise funds? Like sometimes the answer for founders is no. There's still a ton of value going into pitch competitions and accelerators to build growing that network without even expectations to raise funds.
At this point, do you have a kind of target date for launch yet, or are you still continuing just to work on your prototype and refining and iterating?
We're targeting to launch within 6 months. It's exciting for sure, and it's a plan. Remember what I said about plans? It's not, set in stone. It's not necessarily going to happen, but it's good to have a projection of what's going to happen in the future. If you're working with, for example, a team and they ask you, okay, like when can we expect to get more customers. It's good to have a set in stone plan in your head to say, okay, like, in 6 months, this is what will happen. We're trying our best to achieve that. And if there are going to be barriers, we're going to work on that, but we'll figure it out.
My final question would be this is Technovation Girls and they're creating apps and coming up with ideas for potential businesses. So do you have any general advice? I know you've given lots of little tips through this entire talk, but do you have any general advice for girls that are thinking of, hey, yeah, I'd like to start my own business and become an entrepreneur?
I have so many. I have so many. I will probably like boil it down to two or three, but the most important one, if you take away one thing from this recording, is talk to users. If you're launching something that's consumer based, it's probably easier, honestly, to talk to potential users on social media. Ask questions, hey, is anyone going to be interested in this? Once again, so many ideas seem like good ideas, seem like very urgently needed, but you won't know until you talk to people who are actually willing to use it and pay for it. And by the way, using something and paying for something is not the same thing. And businesses cannot grow on just people using it and not paying for it. So definitely talk to users. If you're launching something that you think can help businesses, it's a little bit trickier because you have to get access to working professionals who are working those jobs, but it's not nearly as hard as you think. All you have to do is to try something, and then like out of 10 responses, you might only get one, but you get a real response, and that's very exciting. So talk to people. Second tip, second advice is related, and it's one sentence. It's not nearly as hard as it looks. Of course, girls, if you're already in this competition, you already know that it's, like you already got started, so that's great. My experience growing up as a woman or as a young girl even is that the world tries to tell you how difficult it is for women to achieve anything. Like you hear all kinds of scary talks of like there's a corporate glass ceiling or like there's, just like more privileged groups. They're going to take all your jobs. And a lot of it is coming from good intentions, just like activists. But I always had this fear of like, okay, this sounds very difficult to do anything as a woman. But that's actually not true. It's been emphasized in different contexts for different reasons, but for me, like starting a company was not nearly as difficult as I thought it would be. I did not receive nearly as much discrimination as I thought I would. It's truly like maybe I was just kind of like having mad anxiety about all of this. So I had like very different expectations, but you shouldn't expect any discrimination. I mean, if it happens, then it's bad. It's not normal is really my point. You should expect to have a lot of opportunities coming your way because that's just, that's what you deserve. That's a really good mindset to have as you go ahead and try to talk to users or create something or, build something. Just don't box yourself in because of, everything that seems to be going on out there.
So when you say discrimination, do you mean gender or the fact that you're Asian?
Yeah, I was
What are you
mostly talking
talking?
about gender. Yeah, but I think that applies for everything. Is that because I work in mental health and I work in imposter syndrome, a big aspect of imposter syndrome is just people being conditioned and to think that, okay, like it seems like the world is more used to giving opportunities to a specific gender and ethnic group, so maybe I don't belong here. But just a very difficult mindset to put yourself in, so don't do that to yourself.
The fact that you're going to all these accelerator situations, what is the gender balance there? So are there many women trying to pitch their own
Yeah.
companies?
There's a mix. I'm not gonna lie to you. In the pitch competition that I was a winner of last year, I was one of the two women teams, and there were like around 10 teams. I'm not gonna lie to
Mm.
you, like at times there are going to be an imbalance, but there are also competitions that I personally am not a part of, but they support women and they like exclusively want women. So there are a lot of initiatives out there in the world. The general takeaway is that the world is very big. So one situation, one competition, one cohort doesn't mean anything. And even in that competition, I didn't feel from the male cohort members, I felt like they were always super friendly, super happy to share. So I didn't feel, like excluded or anything.
And it seems like from what you've said that, like you said, you don't feel like you've faced any discrimination. So I feel like maybe this entrepreneurship world, people are pretty supportive and willing to give advice and help.
My experience is still very much limited, and I will back that up with a stat that with seed and pre-seed, which is the, beginning stage of entrepreneurship, which I am in, the ratio of women to men getting funded or receiving any kind of support or in investors is much more favorable than like Series A or like later stages. Later stages it gets more rough. So I've had an okay experience so far. It doesn't mean that like the road is not tough ahead.
As it
Uh,
gets harder, it may be more difficult.
yeah, yeah.
But it's good to know, like you said, it's not as hard as it looks. And
It really
um,
isn't. Because
mm,
numbers can only mean something. Doesn't mean for sure like only 20% of you will get fun. It's not a real thing. The world is
mm.
very big, so like even a small percentage of a large number is still a very large number. Fundraising and investing is very, very hard, and everybody who's tried this knows this, and they will always tell you that it's a nightmare. I personally don't think it's a nightmare. I think it's just a lot of rejections, and I'm okay with that. The most encouraging thing I've heard from a person is that there is an abundance of opportunities. The only rare commodity is a good founder. It's a talented founder who knows how to drive a business to profit. So there's really, when you look at the imbalance here, is that there's an abundance of opportunities and very rare to find a good founder. So, don't worry about it. Just do it.
Be the good founder, right? Do your job well, and you'll be successful.
I honestly just be yourself.
Yeah.
I have off days. Everybody has off days. The mindset of
Mhm.
like, you have to do your job very, very well to achieve success. I think that can push a lot of people to incredibly burned out state, which unfortunately is very common within founders. But I think just be yourself. Do your best on some days, but on some days you're not feeling it, and that's okay. You're human. We're all human. Rejections isn't really the worst thing in the world because as a founder, especially, as young entrepreneurs, everyone will receive rejections and a lot of people will stop because they receive a lot of rejections. They don't think this is the way to go. If you decide that that's not what you want to do with your life, then that's okay. That's completely fine. A lot of people go on to have incredibly successful careers that are not entrepreneurs. But if this is something that truly matters to you, that is truly your passion, and you're receiving a lot of no's, it doesn't mean that it's not going to work out. That's literally just the way it is. It's a numbers game. In the end, rejections are okay. Don't take it too harshly. And if you do, that's also okay. Just seek support from your friends, family, or therapists. Seek support wherever you can because that is a natural way of life and it does build a character. It makes you a better person. Like it takes an incredibly brave and it's a character that I personally respect very much. It takes a person to say, oh, like it's okay for you to say no. I don't take it personally. And it takes even more courage and just like peace of mind to say, okay, like I hear you. If you have any constructive feedback, I'm here to listen. That to me is a great sign of this person's definitely going to do well because they're getting as much information and learning as possible. Rejections are okay. It's a natural part of life. Don't feel discouraged.
And I also like your piece saying about that if you're passionate about something, that will
Mhm.
lead you to continue if it really means something to you, right? Okay, well, thank you so much for this discussion. It's been very, very enlightening for me. I've learned a
Oh, thank
lot
you. It's been a
about,
lot of
no,
fun for
seriously,
me.
yeah, no, I've learned so much about kind of the whole process and what it's like for a young entrepreneur to be kind of right in the middle of it and moving forward. So I really appreciate it.